Having done that, is there a motion to approve the last meeting's minutes?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the Open Space Land Acquisition Farmland Preservation Committee meeting of July 20th, 2020.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes pass. Public comment. This portion of the meeting is specifically set aside for comments from the public who are asked to limit their comments to 2 minutes. Any person interested in providing public comment should email publicmeetings@rockyhillct.gov. You will be provided with a link to attend the Zoom remote meeting and instructions how you can participate. We did have quite a few at the last meeting, so we know that it works smoothly and everybody's able to get into force, and we encourage the public to take advantage of this technology. Having said that, do we have anybody in queue? Not aware of anybody in queue. We are going to move on to the updates from Ray Carpentino.
Ed, maybe we should start off with Nikki.
Great.
You get her
Nikki,
going. So
the floor is yours.
Okay. Can I share my screen? Let's see. Share screen, sound, share. Okay. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm a NRCS soil conservationist out of the Windsor field office, and I was just asked to present to you, just explain a little bit about the conservation plans I drew up for the farm. So we have a photo here of the property, the farm boundaries. I looked at these 3 areas to do conservation plans for. I'm going to just briefly discuss the topography in those fields, a little bit about the conservation plan, what are the soils that are mapped in those fields, different ways the soil can be lost from a field. I'll go into a little bit more detail about the recommended practices, other recommendations I have for those fields and possibly the rest of the property, what potential assistance NRCS can provide, and just try to summarize it. And I don't know if you have time for questions after. Let's see. So this shows the contours of the land. We have flatter areas and steeper areas. It was just a complex site. I had to break up each section of field into smaller areas. And I based that off of looking at what areas were cropped, how they were cropped in from the aerial imagery. So when I first started, I just spoke with each producer who might be leasing the land. I asked what they plan to grow there, how they plan to manage the crop areas, like what is their tillage, harvesting methods, and what pretty much how they going to operate that field for the growing season. So I took their information with the map soils information. I had to enter it into an NRCS soil erosion tool. This gives me, it's a computer program used to estimate the rates of soil loss within a field. So 2 of the farms, they're vegetable growers. I entered in several different crop scenarios, sweet corn, tomatoes, pumpkins, and strawberries, all followed by a winter rye cover crop. The dairy farm, I did silage corn with a winter rye cover crop. And when I entered each crop in, I had the crops running up and down the slopes just as a starting point. Each type of soil has a tolerable soil loss number that's acceptable to NRCS. the soils mapped in these areas have a tolerable soil loss of 3 tons per acre per year. And that's the amount of soil that NRCS is saying it's acceptable to come off the field. With my planning, I could plan it up to losing about 6 tons per acre per year of soil. So because the vegetable farms had various vegetables, I just took the crop that could potentially lose the most amount of soil. And that was basically corn and tomatoes grown without plastic. This visual just gives you some sort of idea on what, say, 15 tons or 30 tons of soil may look like. So before I entered in the recommended practices into the computer program for sweet corn, there was a loss of soil anywhere between 6 to 39 tons per acre per year. And silage corn, that ranged about 5.3 to 18 tons of soil per year. So quite a bit. This just shows you the different soils that are mapped on the property. So here we have map unit 5 and 6. Those are poorly drained soils. 6 is extremely stony, but the majority of the fields are mapped as 87B and C, and those slopes can range anywhere between 3 to 15%. It's a well-drained soil, but it does have a higher potential for erosion. Just a couple different ways soil can be lost from crop fields. We've got sheet and rail. That's just the water comes over the field, grabs the smaller soil particles and carries it away. Sometimes you don't even realize how much soil is leaving the field. And then there's wind erosion. You don't have to have large dust storms. It can just be small breezes and to carry away enough soil. A lot of it depends on the soil type, soil moisture, and how much it's covered. And then down here we have gullies, gully erosion. Water again moves through the field, but it grabs all size particles, stones and rocks. And that depends on the velocity of the water and the slope of the land. Some of the gullies you can fill back in with tillage equipment, but your next rain event, it'll be right back. It'll come back. All right, so the next thing I did with the computer program is to change up how the crop rows orientated on the slopes. So contour farming is what I recommended and I put in the plan. With contour farming, the crop rows follow the contours of the land. And then it'll slow down the water coming over the field, reducing the soil erosion. It also can divert water off to other areas of the field, hopefully to the side of the field, areas that are hopefully vegetated. You can get a loss of cropping areas from this. All depends on how large your equipment is, how much of an area is needed for it to turn from one row to another. And usually you lose it along the sides of the field. So the contour farming alone didn't bring down the soil numbers enough. So I put in to the program contour buffer strips and field borders. They're both just permanent vegetation, mainly grasses. Here down below is the contour buffers. They're grown along contours. in between the cropping rows. In the conservation plans, I put the field borders at the bottom of the slopes. Their purpose is just to trap the soil, any excess nutrients and pesticides. They also can be potential habitat for beneficial insects and birds if that's of interest. They can be mowed for hay if that is also of interest. But if they're mowed for hay or not, they should at least be to maintain them. They need to be mowed approximately once a year. And the last practice I put in the conservation plan is cover crop. Each producer I spoke with said they use a rye cover crop. So I kept that in the plan. I find that cover crop can be a hard practice for producers to plant on time. This can be due to the timing of their cash crop harvest and also the weather for that year. And when I talk about cash crop, it's the crop that is grown and sold for profit. With a cover crop, you plant it, you leave it in the field. You generally don't harvest it. So with a basic cover crop, oats and rye, you want to get it planted in by October 1st to give it time to regrow, get adequate cover on soil for the winter. But I have seen cover crop planted in late October that still came up before the heavy frost. But there's a greater chance that it won't provide adequate ground cover. If you add in more cover crop species to the mix, you just got to plant it earlier, possibly the end of August, mid-September. But the goal is to have cover on the field all year. It's not the cash crop, it's a cover crop. So cover crop has to be terminated or it'll compete with the cash crop for soil moisture and nutrients. And that's done by tilling it into the ground, spraying it with an herbicide, or crimping, which means you just flatten it and leave it on the field. So there's other recommendations I did not put in the plan. Possibly remove some trees and shrubs to allow in more light to the cropland. You might want to leave some as a windbreak. Any of the existing drainage ditches, clean them out, and you'll want to keep like a 10 to 20 foot grass buffer between the crop field and the center of the drainage ditch, so it collects excess soil or nutrients. If the leases haven't been put together yet, I do recommend that they don't specify what the farmers need to grow. Growing different crops help keep crop pests and diseases down. And the last thing I'm recommending is possibly, especially for the vegetable farmers, maybe provide some irrigation, either through a well or if you can tie into the town water system. So the other areas of the property, I did not put together a plan for the rest of the farm, but I just wanted to add in some quick thoughts. For the forested areas, any invasive plants, try to eradicate them as best as possible so you can keep a healthy forest. potential for walking trails for the public, if that's of interest for the committee. If so, I would keep the walking trails as far away from the leased areas as possible. You will need to cross between the fields to get to the southern wooden area. But you could put up signs, maybe gates across the farm access roads. And if you're going to allow dogs on the property, they should be on a leash so they don't damage the crops. Open fields, you want to keep them open. You want to mow them at least once a year or every other year. Other areas could be areas for birds, wildlife, potential pollinator habitats. And if you want to do community gardens on this property, I would first test the soil for any pollutants if you haven't already. You might be able to do raised garden beds may be necessary if the soil is contaminated. You want to bring in irrigation water. If there's wells on site that you plan on using, test the water quality for potential contaminants, or just hook up if there's town water available. That might be the easiest thing. So NRCS does provide technical and financial assistance. Producers who are going to lease these fields, they can contact me or the Windsor office and apply for financial assistance for any of these practices in the conservation plan or any other practices such as irrigation. I don't believe NRCS can provide funding directly to towns, but if that's of interest, I can look into it and get you a definite answer. So in summary, there's always the potential for soil loss, and there's various ways to reduce that. One size doesn't fit all, but flexibility is key, meaning that I can change the plans a little bit. Let's see. So if I can change the plans, if somebody wants to increase their cover crop mix, plants with a no-till drill, or just narrow down their crops, may be able to reduce the amount of buffers or the width of the buffers in some of the fields so they can get more cropping areas. And I'm willing to meet with any committee members or producers out in the farm and to discuss things further if anyone is interested or wants to. I don't know if I have time for questions, if anyone has any questions. You can always feel free to contact me if you have questions at a later date also. And this is my contact information on this slide.
Sure, Nikki, we'll open it up for a couple questions really quick.
Okay.
If somebody has a quick question, and otherwise we've got your information to connect with you. Councilor Duff.
I guess my primary question just be, you mentioned the cover cropping in for October 1. Do we think that's going to be happening this year, or is that something that we need to look at to help ensure a good season next year?
You could throw down a cover crop of simple rye for this year. I don't know what's out in the fields now. The key is if you want to keep the soil on the fields, you need some sort of vegetated cover on it. But if someone wants to apply for funding, it would have to be for next year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I'm sure everybody's got a number of questions, but in the interest of moving things along, I'll hold the rest of mine for later.
Thank you, Counselor Duff. Yeah, we'll get some more questions in as we go along. I don't know that, well, we'll find out from Mr. Carpentino about the leases and all that. Counselor Malaro, do you have any questions for the NRCS for the soil conservation plan?
I do not. Thank you, Nikki.
You're welcome.
Sandy, do you?
I hope it's very quick. Nikki, is it a given that we're going to lose that much soil every year to erosion or et cetera? That seems.
It could be, yeah. It's amazing on how much soil can be lost, and we don't even realize that it's being lost because you don't see it. You don't necessarily see a big pile of soil on the bottom of your field.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Nikki, can you build soil up? I'm sure you can build it up by bringing material in. So if we wanted to make the whole field uniform and it's draining, you could bring something in that helps it drain, and then you're constantly maybe adding to your field. But I would imagine you could build up just as easily as you could wash out.
Yes, and also cover crop can build up the field, but very slowly. And every time you till a field, you're losing some soil. But if you do truck in soil, you can reshape a field. I think trucking in soil would be quite expensive.
Yeah, the idea of tilling under the cover crop that will then break down and add nutrients to the soil for the real crop.
Right, right.
I think we're done with questions. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Nikki.
Ray, it's all you.
Hey, Nikki, can we have a copy of that presentation? Can you email that to me?
Yes, I will email it to you.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you. All right, I'm just going to jump to the update. I'll follow the agenda. Number A, we already did the NRCS review of the plan. The Straska Farm lease update. We have 2 farmers who have signed and given us the $1 lease fee for up to January. We're still trying to get Lisa Gobert in. She's very busy, but hopefully she'll be in this week to sign the last of the 3 leases. Item C, Straska Farm Parcel B cleanup. The September 24th date is coming up on Thursday. That 24th deadline is the substantial progress deadline. We're working right now, we're working with the town attorney to draft up the 3-week notice that we need to give him in accordance to the purchase and sale agreement. If upon inspection, there has not been substantial progress in the cleanup of parcel B, then the notification will go out to both Mr. Straska and to his attorney, indicating that the town may take action to basically clean it ourselves, contact other vendors who may be salvage yards or farm equipment auctioneers. There are a couple of different options that we're looking at right now. And item D, steep 2020.
Ray, before you jump on to D on C, are there questions from counselors? Counselor Duff.
Yeah, but my main question would be, is the process you described automatic, or is there any action that we need to take either at the council level or at the subcommittee level to make sure that that all runs as needed through the town attorney and town staff and the representatives of the current occupant of that parcel?
We are taking care of that through staff with a town attorney. And it's via the contract, the purchase and sale agreement.
And we're not going to fight over substantial. Is that we can either go on there and say yes, it's been substantial progress, or not, or is that going to come later?
We do have a very detailed plan of items, from a year and a half ago or 2 years ago that have the thousands of items inventoried. The idea is to just help get the property cleaned up. We don't want to get into another legal battle. So, if it's obvious, and most are, if there's a large contingency of an agreement, oh yeah, it looks like you're moving along well. We need to keep that going. Mr. Straska does have until January 28th to vacate and clean the property.
Councilor Milaro?
I do not have any other questions on this. Thank you.
Sandy?
Yes,
Kelly?
one question, Ray, on that January 28th date, we are holding the escrow money right up until that point, right? He does not get the full amount until we've made that determination. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I don't know about the rest of you on the committee, but I'm wondering, the question to me is, Ray, are you going to come back to this committee and look for guidance? Let's just say that something is done. There is progress, but the word substantial progress is open for interpretation. Are you coming back to this committee to ask us to make any decisions regarding substantial or unsubstantial?
We weren't thinking of doing that. Since we are working with our attorney and their attorney and staff here, the light staff and John, I suppose if you want to get involved,
I'm not proposing that we interject into a legal scenario, but I do think that because this falls before the next meeting, is there some sort of interim email that can go out to everybody on this committee as to that inflection point, September 24th, 25th, 26th? Is there any way we can have an updated email to all of us as to the findings on that date?
Yeah, when our town attorney issues the letter and we get a response back from Mr. Straska's attorney, I can easily send out an email to each committee member.
Thank you.
Indicating, the date of the letter going out and what the response has been, if any. And then, where we go from there.
Thank you. I think we're all set.
Moving on to D. Steep 2020 grant. The state had extended the deadline for submission of the application, so they extended the deadline for notification. They plan to start notifying the towns October 1 as to the status of our applications.
So could we also get a notice as soon as you know to the committee?
I will do that, yes.
Awesome. Any other comments or questions from the committee?
Yeah, just going back to the lease update, you mentioned the 2 farmers signed for the $1 this year. So they are anticipating doing some work on the site this year then?
Yeah, I think they probably will not be able to get there until November, until they're done with their produce and their activities on their current farms.
All right, thanks.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
All right,
Ray.
thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks again, Nikki.